Good evening and welcome to a special edition of Metro Focus. I'm Jack Ford. Can anyone slow down Senator Bernie Sanders? Well, that is the big question tonight ahead of a crucial primary in South Carolina this Saturday and then Super Tuesday next week. The senator from Vermont faced a barrage of attacks during a heated and sometimes chaotic Democratic debate in Charleston on Tuesday. And if there was any question before, there apparently is not one now. The self-described Democratic socialist is indeed the Democratic front-runner for now. Meanwhile, outside our nation's capital, President Trump will be rallying his troops Saturday when he addresses the CPAC conference, an annual gathering of conservatives that the president has appeared at every year since he took office. So, a lot to talk about. And to do that, we are delighted to have two of our favorite guests here to discuss the state of the race, political columnist Amy Holmes and New York Times bestselling author and political commentator Ellis Henican. Always a pleasure to have the two of you.
Great to be here. Thank you.
So we have a whole lot for us to get to. I thought one of the interesting comments was Senator Sanders saying, I seem to be hearing my name a lot from the other people on the stage. What did that mean?
It meant he was the front runner. I mean, listen, when you're running for president, you have a choice. You can be the front runner and everybody will beat up on you, or you can be one of the others and you have to do the beating up, and you've got to cause enough of a ruckus that people pay attention to you and that 800 number fundraising line lights up. Let me tell you.
.com now.
Yeah, it's .com, yeah.
There are burdens to both roles,
yeah,
but the front runner role is better.
That's interesting because people say when they're not the front runner, I'm okay with this. I'm good. I'm in the hunt.
You want to trade places?
I'm not the hunted.
You want to trade places?
Yeah. How about that? How about, were you surprised at all at the attacks coming from, including Senator Warren directed at Senator Sanders?
I wasn't surprised, but I have to tell you, I was exhausted after those 2 hours. I watched so that our viewers at home didn't have to. It was weirdly both too personal and yet too vague, that it was such a pig pile and a pile-on that I think a lot of the candidates, that they forgot that there were viewers at home watching, wanting to see not only, could they take down the front runner and have one of those viral moments, but what was their pitch for their own candidacy? If they were competing for the least appealing candidate, I'd have to say it was a 7-way tie.
Yeah. Let me talk about some specifics, get your reactions to some of the candidates here. Joe Biden.
He did well. I mean, this was maybe his best performance. I would say he is alive. It looks like he's going to win in South Carolina. Is he old? Yeah. Is he the same Joe Biden he was 10 years ago? Maybe not. But I would say that as we sit here now, he is the most plausible non-Bernie Sanders candidate on that field, and he advanced himself in the debate.
Yeah. What do you think about it?
I think he did. It looked like he'd taken his B12 shot so he could be focused for those 2 hours. He had some stumbles. For example, he suggested that 150 million Americans have died from gun violence in the last 10 years. That would be half our population.
Yeah, that number obviously meant something else.
Yeah, that meant something else. But I think he did, at least in those 2 hours, sort of quell some of the growing concern about his energy, his ability to focus. Only earlier this week, he told an audience that he was running for the United States Senate. Yeah. And there was that weird moment that he said that he had been arrested and thrown into jail trying to visit Nelson Mandela. That turned out to be wildly false. But at least in those 2 hours, when 15.3 million Americans were watching, they saw somebody who could handle himself.
And the fact that the president and Amy are both pounding on him suggests that he's the strongest candidate against Donald Trump. I mean, which is really his key argument.
Yeah. How about Mayor Bloomberg? What do you think about Mayor Bloomberg?
Less unlikable than he was last week. Last week, he was just eviscerated. I mean, Senator Elizabeth Warren, she just stuck the knife in when she, suggested that he needed to release those women who had signed NDAs. I think this last week, he improved slightly. Not enough. It's clearly not his métier. It's clearly not where he shines. And actually just this morning heard a campaign ad on the radio coming over here, and I thought he actually had a pretty good line. He said, he's not great at debates. He's not a debater, but he's a doer. So I think we're going to see him lean on that.
And we've heard that even from within his own grouping, saying, look, this is not what he's good at. But you can be prepared for certain, this is going to come, here's your response. This is, how do you deal with your problem? And then how do you get the good stuff out there? He didn't seem to be in a position to take advantage of any of those opportunities.
He was no good at it, and he certainly set the bar low enough the first week so that the second week, maybe by comparison, was good. It's funny because people who are comfortable with it, and listen, the three of us are all natural talkers, but a lot of people aren't. And I got to tell you, it's hard to teach somebody to do that well who isn't naturally inclined. I mean, me, I grew up in a big, loud family with a dinner table where wine was served, so it came naturally, but some people don't have that.
And while all of that's true, let's also remember that Mayor Bloomberg is a 3-term mayor, as he pointed out, the most populous city in America and with an economy larger than many countries. While I don't think necessarily being great at debates translates into being great as President of the United States. It's not as if he's a novice, and he certainly knew what would be his, greatest weaknesses.
And I like the fact that he's got a sense of humor about it.
And to be
okay,
I think
I'm
he
not
needs to lean
I'm not
into
good
that.
at
He
that.
needs to lean in.
And to be fair, we're not electing him to be a great debator.
That's right.
As mayor,
Well,
he was
that's
never
his
a great
slogan.
speaker.
There's some presidents, as you guys know, who have passed on debates in
Maybe
their
he
re-election
should've.
campaign.
And I actually think that he could really do himself a lot of good by just sort of leaning into the fact he's not great at it, he's awkward, he's not,
But here's what I'm good at.
Right,
He did.
exactly.
Here's what I ran this.
I actually have a campaign button idea for him.
Right.
I like Mike, question mark.
Somebody's going to grab that one
I
out
think
there.
so.
Let me ask you one more specific about this. I liked one of the wrap-up question that they did where they were asked about misperceptions out there about you. How would you address them? And when they asked Senator Sanders that, talked about what is the misperception you think that you'd like to address out there, I thought he had a really interesting response.
he gave the job interview answer,
yeah, he did.
right?
But let's take a look real quick at what he had to say there when that question was posed to him.
Misconception, and you're hearing it here tonight, is that the ideas I'm talking about are radical. They're not. In one form or another, they exist in countries all over the world. Healthcare is a human right. We have the necessity, the moral imperative to address the existential threat of climate change. Other countries are doing that. We don't need more people in jail, disproportionately African American, than any other country on earth. Not a radical idea.
Okay, now, most people are loath to change. Change is abhorrent in some way, shape, or form. What about him saying it's not radical?
Maybe one of his best answers of the campaign, because it does remind people that anytime you're talking about change, there is always resistance, and it's true of so many of the things that we treasure in America, from Social Security to civil rights to gay marriage, all of these things that at first seem tough. It is worth remembering that every single other country in this world is able to provide universal health care to its people. Why can't we? I think that's one of the strongest arguments he can make.
Well, you're conflating universal health care with Medicare for all, which is single payer and would raise taxes, some say, to 37% for middle-class families. I thought that answer was the job interview answer when you're asked, what is your greatest weakness? And you say that I'm a workaholic. He was asked, what is the misconception about you, not the misconception about your ideas? Now, again, it stayed on message, and which he did fairly well in the debate, but it didn't tell us very much about Bernie Sanders other than he's very ideological.
Yeah. Do these really have any substantive value anymore, or have they merely become theater?
Were they ever not theater?
Well, you can go back to, a lot of people say, go back to Nixon Kennedy.
Right.
Single moderator asking substantive questions about policies. You didn't see as much, well, he's an idiot. No, he's an idiot. No, he's a bigger idiot than I am, kind of things.
With Nixon Kennedy, people who listened on the radio thought that Nixon won. People who watched television thought Kennedy did because Nixon was sweating buckets.
The impact of the camera.
Right, exactly, the impact of the camera. And politicians, again, this is not their first time in front of a camera. Yeah. And so commanding a camera, it actually is important as President of the United States to be able to command the audience when you're speaking from the Oval Office or from the podium.
But does this format give anybody an opportunity to even show?
To the substance and drawing contrasts substantively between the candidates. We saw a lot of personal barbs, a lot of shivving the competitor, but not a whole lot of substance, I didn't think.
I'm an outlier in this one. I like political theater, and these things are great political theater.
They are. I mean, you can't disagree with the fact that they're theater.
Watching the strategy, it's one of the few times in American politics that we see these people in a tense situation, operating in real time, without their aides around them, without press releases to hand out. It doesn't necessarily tell us they'd be a great president in a crisis, but it's a character study a little bit. And I think it's been interesting. For instance, there have been several times in this round of debates where some candidate, Kamala Harris or whomever, just comes out like an aggressive hound, and people judge that, and they say, you know what? I don't necessarily like the way you beat up on Joe Biden.
Well, hold on a minute. I was going to actually draw a different conclusion from that, which is when Kamala Harris beat up on Joe Biden over busing, her polling went up. She got a bump, and she got a bump in campaign donations right after that. But where is she now? She's dropped out of the race. Elizabeth Warren, it didn't work. So I'm not so sure that these viral moments in debates actually serve the candidate long term.
They gave you a quick bump. But
right.
But how about this? We heard the Democrats before this whole process and all of the, 10 debates before it all started. We heard pledges from them saying, look, what's important to us is to take back the White House. So here's what we're going to say. We're going to pledge we're not going to personally attack each other anymore.
Did you
we're going to talk
believe that
about
at the
issues.
time?
Well, I know, but we're going to talk about issues.
Come on,
You're hopeful about it. But here's the bottom line.
Okay.
If I'm involved in the Trump campaign, I'm pulling bites from every one of these.
Of course.
Where one says, you won't be a good president, I will. And then when it comes time, whoever's running, I'm running that bite, and I'm saying, even fellow Democrats said that person would not be a good president. Why would you vote for them?
That's politics.
I mean, listen.
But have we seen
don't
more
you
of it?
think? But
have we seen more of it though in this? It feels
No.
like maybe just because there are more bodies. Is that what it
Remember
is?
2016 and how nasty and ugly it got on the Republican side? My
And
goodness.
Trump, by the way, has been saying some stuff that's going to work pretty well in some of those commercials, don't
Right.
you think?
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I'm
I
sure
mean,
that'll be
if we have more than half a dozen coronavirus cases, boy, there's a lot of stuff that was said in that press conference yesterday that it's going to come back to haunt, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're a long way away from the Lincoln-Douglas debates, I think.
But even
Which were probably
even
pretty
they were
boring
right.
if you were
But
there.
even
Actually,
people,
right.
some of the historians say
They went on for
were
days,
Yeah,
some of the
yeah, for
debates,
days and days.
I love your nostalgia, and I genuinely
I think he's
wish.
calling you old.
Yes, that's the nice thing about being old is you can embrace your nostalgia.
This is public television. We like quiet, reasoned discussion. But listen, it's also the year 2020. I think it behooves all of these people to learn these new formats, figure out how to shine, how aggressive should you be, should you fire at the incumbent or should you go after the front runner? Those are just, to me, as a fan of political theater and someone who loves arguing politics, I think that stuff is interesting.
But it's also, looking for those moments when you say to shine, again, to connect to the people who are watching. I felt like in many of these debates, they're so focused on each other and the moderators and, give me more time, don't cut me off, or what, that they're forgetting that there are people sitting at home who want them to reach through the screen and talk directly to them.
And the people will tell you, and there were a couple of interviews I saw right before this saying, where they were asked, what do you want? And the response was, I don't want to see them attacking each other. I want them to tell me what they want to do if they're president. How will they get it done? How will they pay for it? And you see a lot of people being disappointed afterwards saying, I didn't get that.
And don't forget, the candidates, they all have the opportunity to run attack ads.
Yeah.
So they can play, nicey-nicey on the stage if they want, and then, run
and
a
then
whole,
unload.
and turn into
let
a
me,
machete.
let me jump on, because we got a lot more coming up. So let's start with South Carolina, right? Primary on Saturday. Joe Biden has said all along, basically it's his state. He got a significant endorsement from Representative Jim Clyburn. Is this, in fact, Armageddon for Joe Biden? Is this the last great battle that he has to win and win resoundingly?
Oh, it's do or die. I mean, if he doesn't have a victory and he doesn't have a commanding victory, he's finished. But it looks like, as we sit here now, and these things can change by the minute, it looks like he's likely to do pretty well. I mean, Bernie Sanders has left the state. The polling is suggesting a double-digit win. If that happens, and again, I'm not pretending to know, but if it happens, it could very well launch him with plausibility into Super Tuesday, and frankly, able to raise some money, which he needs.
Yeah, he lives to fight another day.
Yeah.
But I think another sort of interesting thing that we're seeing with South Carolina is how well Tom Steyer is doing, that he has spent all of his time and his resources, as he said on the debate stage, in South Carolina speaking to voters. And it also suggests that African American voters in South Carolina, 60% of the Democratic primary voters, that their votes are still a little bit up for grabs. And it's not obvious necessarily that African American voters are going to want to go with the establishment candidate as overwhelmingly as they did, say, a year ago.
How about Super Tuesday? And let's talk specifically about Mayor Bloomberg. You know, you can make an analogy about it's, you know, he's in the midst of a heavyweight fight, and his trainers have said, just sort of bob and weave for the first few rounds. Don't let him put a glove on you. And then after you tire him out, then you're going to come in and you're going to try to deliver your knockout blow. And that's kind of, is that a fair analogy for what Mayor Bloomberg is looking for Super Tuesday? That this is going to have to be maybe his Armageddon?
It's a bold and untried strategy. I mean,
Hold on.
No one has
Mayor
ever,
Giuliani did. He
Well,
tried it, and it didn't work out very well.
Well, but no, he
skipped the first
he
4
didn't
states
have,
and
he
bombed
didn't
in
have the
Florida.
$50 billion
That's
that
true.
Mike has, which is what's really fueling. Without any money, it's never going to work. But, you know, I mean, listen, it may well not work. There are 3 candidates who are relevant at this point. The rest of them ought to leave, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that's my next question for you.
Okay.
Finish that thought,
But,
and then I
but
want to ask
Mike
you.
Bloomberg has a theory. I would say if you put a gun in my head and ask me to gauge its likelihood to succeed, it probably won't. But you know what? I give him credit for having an idea and people around him. It could work.
Yeah. What do you think?
Well, $400 million later, we will be testing this theory. His theory has been particularly focusing on California with a very big, rich delegate pool there. But at this point, he's not even meeting the 15% threshold to even get 1 delegate. So this is a very risky strategy to be running as a national candidate and allowing these first, 4 states to sort of I guess he's hoping they'll fracture the field and they'll go into the convention.
And then you swoop in
And
with
the
your...
anti-Bernie
Because it's one thing to say, all right,
pressure
15 million people watch the debate.
Right.
Hundreds of millions can see these advertisements, these
Right.
commercials out there.
But remember that, money in politics, of course, it's valuable. It can make the difference on the margins, but it doesn't determine who's the winner.
By
And we
itself.
just saw in
You
2016.
can't buy. We know one of the
Hillary
things, even though people have been
Clinton,
accused, you can't buy
You
an
can't buy an
election.
election.
Let me come back to something you mentioned, which it's very curious to me. How does the Democratic Party get some of these people out? Because at some point in time, fairly soon, they got to realize we got to stop fighting. You know, because they might say, all right, if we want to attract the moderate votes to Joe Biden or Mayor Bloomberg, what do we do with Senator Klobuchar? How does that happen? Does somebody go to them and say, look, you fought a good fight, it's time for you to get out? Or does it have to be entirely based on their decision? Does something have to be offered? A trade?
Well,
it can't be
yes.
done. You can't do that so clearly. Listen, I was not a math major in college, but I know that when you divide that pie into 47 pieces, the pieces aren't going to be very large. And that the only way, if you have a strong front runner and a whole bunch of other people divvying up what's left, you got to get some of them to leave. And I think it comes from pressure, it comes from running out of money, it comes from whoever it is that they respect leaning on them. And some of them may just say no. Some of them may just say no.
But then what do you do
Never
if-
underestimate egos in politics.
we all know that, and that's fine.
Right.
You need an ego to do that job. But how does the Democratic leadership deal with that? Saying at some point in time when they say, "No, I want to stay in and fight," is there anything they can do to get them out?
Well, you talked about backroom deals, for example, talking that, you would be the VP on the ticket if you bow out now and throw your support behind whomever is considered the front runner, if that's Bernie Sanders, Mike Bloomberg, or Joe Biden. You can also do backroom deals in a Democratic administration. What ambassadorship do you
would you
want?
like?
What would you like as a cabinet?
Secretary of something that
Secretary
sounds
of
really
State,
good
Secretary
before
of
your name.
Education,
kind of
Elizabeth
thing.
Warren, you love the education thing, Secretary of Education if you like that. Also, for the Democratic Party to talk about, talk to some of these candidates, particularly I think of Mayor Pete, which is if you want a future in this party, if you want us to support you 4 years down the road, 8 years down the road in your political ambitions, then you're going to play ball with what we need you to do.
Yeah, I'm going to come back to something you mentioned before, and that was who on that stage do we think President Trump would most be concerned about if that person was going to be the Democratic candidate?
I get the impression Mayor Bloomberg. And you saw that Mayor Bloomberg, he is willing to get in the gutter with Trump, with the personal jibes, which really do get under President Trump's skin. He ran an ad a couple of weeks ago showing President Trump golfing and insinuating that Trump is fat, overweight, and also he's, I guess, cheats when it comes to golfing. And President Trump, I mean, that really rattles him when you do that. And I think also President Trump sees Mike Bloomberg as a little bit having betrayed him. That he thinks, well, when we were both big billionaires in New York City, you loved me. Now what are you doing, calling me names? You're the guy that used to golf with me. So I think at sort of an ego, personal level, Mike Bloomberg is the one that rattles Trump the most.
Well, I don't know that Donald and Mike were ever real personal buddies. But listen, it's clear what the president thinks, and you can just know it from the Twitter count. They want to run against Bernie Sanders. Now, whether that's correct,
that's who they fear the least.
That's who they want to run against, and that the two of the plausible candidates is Biden and Bloomberg. I think they might be more scared of Biden. They see the same polling that we see, which is that in states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, that he kicks the president's butt with those voters there, and I think they understand that in the end, that's likely where this race is going to be. So yeah, they're pounding out of fear.
How about that argument to the Democratic primary voters out there that says the president would love to run against Bernie Sanders? Should that send up some flags in the minds of?
It doesn't appear to be, given the fact that Bernie Sanders is doing so well and is considered the front runner. I'm not sure that voters necessarily look at electability. I think that they look at, do I want this person to be commander-in-chief? Do they have the energy, the drive, the ideas, the connection, the focus to be the person that I'd like to see leading this country? I think when you get into these process arguments that you lose a lot of voters, and Bernie Sanders, I mean, he's case in point.
Yeah.
You know, electability is an interesting word, and I think about it a lot because the one thing I care about is beating Donald Trump. I'd run any of them. I'd happily support any of them. But you know what the best way to prove your electability is?
Winning.
Win some stuff.
Winning.
Yeah.
And there's one guy out there lately who's been winning some stuff.
Right.
And until that changes,
It's one thing to say, hey, give me a chance, I can win. It's another to say, you had your chance, and I won.
And let's sort of dig under that notion of electability. So Congressman Jim Clyburn, the number 3, the majority whip in the House, Democrat from South Carolina, he just came out and endorsed Joe Biden, for the election on Saturday. It is powerful. I mean, Jim Clyburn has a lot of power in South Carolina and a lot of clout with voters. But here's the thing: in making his case, he wasn't saying that Bernie Sanders is necessarily unelectable. He said that socialism does not fly with a lot of South Carolina voters. So he was actually making an argument, not just who can beat Donald Trump, but are these ideas connecting with voters? And he says no.
Let me get one last thought in, and we touched base on this a little bit briefly. We saw the president appearing in a press conference yesterday and talking about the coronavirus. Now, one of the things certainly you look for in a president is, and often people say it's the number one, the ability to protect the American people.
That's
and there have been
duty,
criticism.
job number one.
Yeah, there have been criticism already directed at the president, saying that he was downplaying it. He got out there yesterday. What do you both think about how he's handling this? And again, under the political umbrella, certainly the health umbrella is more important, but under the political umbrella and how this might play out in a presidential campaign.
it's been disastrous so far. I mean, the president acts like it's not a problem, and in his very media veil, the experts that he brings onto the stage all contradict him and say, no, it's not going to burn itself out in April. It's not going to go from 15 cases to 5. It's going to shoot up, and this is something really serious. And I think the reception that the Vice President Pence has received as the man quarterbacking this has also been. This is a guy who literally does not believe in science. Do you want to put a person who believes that cigarettes don't cause cancer, who is against clean needles for addicts, who questions, straight down the line, the climate change? I don't think it's working out very well. That's what I would say.
Well, I think that there's a disconnect between what President Trump has actually done versus what he's saying to the public. So as we know, President Trump, he halted flights from the from Wuhan, China, the ground zero for coronavirus. And that has so far, fingers crossed, knock on metal, been successful in terms of just on the ground approach to this. But he has a very difficult needle to thread that on the one hand, you certainly want the American public to be ready. You want health authorities to be ready for all of this, but you don't want to be causing a panic. And I think he's very concerned. He certainly doesn't want to cause a panic economically that could hurt the country and hurt him politically. So I don't think that his messaging has been clear, but I think his approach to it so far, again, fingers crossed, has kept a lot of Americans safe.
Well, I got to tell you, I got up this morning and I said to myself, it's going to be a good day. I'm going to get a chance to talk to Amy and Ellis. And whenever I do that,
Likewise.
it's
Always a
entertaining
pleasure.
Thank you.
and informative.
Always a pleasure.
Pleasure.
Always.
We're going to do this again real soon, guys. I promise you.
Thank
It's a
you.
pleasure. Thanks so much. And thanks all of you for joining us. Have a good night.